Well, hello and welcome back to Be Courageous. And today we're going to look at the question of how did a blind man get his sight? And we're going to look at the healing of Bartimaeus. And I want you to turn with me to Mark chapter 10, verse 51. And Jesus has asked him what he wants, and it says that the blind man said to him, "Rabbi, that I might receive my sight." You know, I'll never forget the first time I saw somebody recover their sight. It was this amazing experience, but it was also really simple. It wasn't spectacular at all. You know, when you think about these things, you think it's going to be really spectacular. It wasn't spectacular at all. I was ministering at a conference in the Czech Republic, and I called out a word of knowledge, and this man believed it was for him. He blinked a few times and his sight returned. And I only knew something had happened when there was this commotion and he came up and gave his testimony. And from that, you know, we can learn some principles to help us receive healing from this story of Bartimaeus. You see, what happened was when he heard Jesus was passing that way, he began to shout out, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." You know, it's really important to understand what's happening here. Two things are kind of interrelated. The first thing is, in calling him Son of David, what he's doing is he's recognising that Jesus is the Messiah. The Messiah who'd been promised, who'd been foretold, and who would bring fulfilment of the covenant. And he recognised that healing would come as a result of the Messiah's presence. And then the second thing is this: he calls out in reliance on that covenant nature of God. He calls on his covenant Hesed. Now that's a Hebrew word, it's right through the Old Testament, and it's the Hebrew word for the, in, you know, is often translated in the New Testament and in the Old, mercy. What it means is kind of bigger than that. It means mercy in accordance with God's covenant, or God's loyalty and desire to fulfill his promises for his covenant people. You know, it's sometimes translated in the New Testament particularly as loving kindness. Now, I was looking at that, and one of the things I discovered is that word loving kindness didn't exist in that form until they tried to translate this Hebrew word, which they didn't have an equivalent for. So they invented this word, loving kindness. And I just find that amazing. But God never fails in his desire to show Hesed to his people. It's his desire to love those who he's in covenant with. It's I guess it's kind of his loyal love, if you like. And that's why the Bible repeatedly includes the phrase, his mercy, Hesed, endures forever. So when this man heard that Jesus was passing by, he expected God's covenant kindness to be on the scene and to be available to him if he called on it. He had an expectation in his heart of something good happening. And that's why we read that throwing aside his garment, he rose and came to Jesus. Now, what's that all about? Well, that garment was to show that he'd been checked out by the Levitical priesthood, and they were certifying that he was a genuine blind beggar. It was kind of a license to prove that he wasn't faking it. And it was his license to beg. So he threw aside that garment because he determined in his heart that he would have Hesed healing. And he threw aside his reliance on begging and placed instead his reliance on his covenant with God. He set his heart on God's covenant mercy as his means of provision and healing. And you know, in that same way, God's covenant's blessings are available to us today. His Hesed is still his desire to extend covenant loyalty and loving kindness to us as receivers from that new covenant paid for by Jesus at the cross. Amen. So Father, I thank you for your covenant faithfulness, your loving kindness and your everlasting Hesed extended to me as a child of your new covenant. Amen.